Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here, back with another tier list for Genealogy of the Holy War. This is a continuation of my previous tier list for the game. This time I'm going to be going over the second generation units and characters from Chapter 6 through Endgame. So like my previous tier list, this isn't going to be assuming a ranked run where you're trying to get every unit to level 30 or at least as close to level 30 as you possibly can. It's not LTC, trying to save as many turns as possible. It's not speed run or trying to get the game as quickly as possible using real time as a measurement. It's just which units I think in general make the game easier. Word to note about Gen 2 is that many of the units, particularly like the child units, their exact stats, base stats, their growth rates, the skills they learn, their weapon and item inheritance, it can vary a bit based off your inheritance. So for many of these units, take their placement, give or take a little bit. It's kind of hard to say exactly where definitively the child units go. They vary so much because, there might be two cases where, two mothers produce two different kids and they both want, a certain character as the father make best kids. I think like the best pairing for Aramis in a vacuum is Lewin, but the best pairing for Tailtune in a vacuum is also Lewin. You can't be with both. Then you also got cases, with like Lana and her brother Lester, where depending on which pairing you make, one will be pretty good and the other one it's suffers greatly. So it's kind of varies based off that. I should note that I've played Genealogy of the Holy War to completion 3 times. The first time I just kind of paired up my units just however. I didn't know what the child units were going to be like, and half my characters turned out pretty good. The other half, could have been worse. They were all right. The second time I had all new pairings. I just wanted to have completely new child units, experimented with all new pairings. And the third time I did a substitute only run. Not only using the substitute characters, I just mean I didn't get any of the direct child descendant characters. The only ones I got were substitutes, and I could rely on like failsafe characters like Seliph, Shannan, Eris, etc. So going into the list, when we get to the child units, I'll try to go over the 2 pairings that I have personal experience with, and I might touch upon some other units, some other types of pairings I think are good. Enough rambling on. Let's just get started with the list. Starting, of course, with Seliph. Seliph, I think, is a very interesting unit. He does not start out as strong as his father Sigurd did. He doesn't have a mount. And I think the base stats of the children characters are going to vary a bit based on how the stats of their parents. But I think in general, his starting stats aren't going to be as good as Sigurd. However, all of his growths are either about the same, if not slightly better, or just better. I think Seliph, the common strategy to use is to have him inherit a bunch of items from his father, especially like the Paragon Ring, a Silver Sword or Brave Sword that has critting potential, or at least close to critting potential, a bunch of stat boosting rings, and then have him solo or semi-solo Chapter 6. So when Chapter 7 hits, he's ready to promote, or at least, very close to promotion. And obviously, do that. I think that's the probably the best strategy I could recommend overall. It's like top of S tier. If you don't give him as much heavy investment, he's still fine, maybe like A tier. I just think he makes the best uses of those resources. Like, yeah, you could give some of the stat boosting rings, good sword, leg ring, paragon ring to like, say, Larcei or someone. She'll be better, but Seliph, when he gets a horse, when he promotes, he gets mounted movement, and you really want your main lord, I think in this game in particular, to be get that promotion, get that high movement and high stats. It'll be an easier time going from castle to castle seasons. And Seliph is one that sees, and unlike someone like Roy from Binding Blade or Lynn from Blazing Blade, or like Marth from Shadow Dragon, it is a very good idea to invest in your lore, and the investing in him will make a difference. All right, next we have Larcei and Ulster, her brother. I don't think Ulster is the correct name anymore. I think he's gone through a few name changes, but Ulster was what he was named in the translation I used. Very similar units to like Ira from the first generation. I just think a tiny bit better. Like Ira was like top of C. These I think are going to be like bottom of B, just because they're pretty similar to Ira in that they're good at combat, but they're foot locked. They have trouble getting to the action. But almost no matter which pairing you give them, I think they're going to be slightly better. Like they'll get Pursuit, as far as a class skill. They'll get Astra, and they'll get Nihil for the rare instances where it shows up. And Larcei will get any swords from her mother Iron. Ulster here will get any swords if his father is sword wielding, or you happen to do something like the sword wielding bosses of Chapter 3, the Silver Blade, like the Bolt Sword, if you put on Lex, just keep it on him. I think they'll get basically, what I have, but they'll get at least something better. Lex is a common father. I've used that before, like my second run. They'll get Paragon Advantage for the rare instance it comes up, plus just a little more bulk survivability. Do Holland, like I did my first playthrough. They'll have Astra and Luna, which they both can't simultaneously activate, but you increase the chance, even if you don't get Astra, you at least get Luna, and they'll give a lot of HP and skill for chance for either one of those to activate. Then other common, combinations, you get Noish for critical and cost, or Jamka for adept and a cost. Or maybe like even you get Soul, which I don't think is as useful as Astra, but you also get the bargain band, get the or bargain skill, and you get that Paragon band easier. I just think in general they're like Ira, and I'm rating them together. Probably should have mentioned at the beginning just because they're so similar. They're just a little bit better. Like Ira was like top of C. These are probably gonna be like bottom of B. I think Larcei is a little bit better just because again she gets adept upon promotion. She's guaranteed to get good swords from her mother, which you might have a more difficult time if you choose a father like Jamka or Lex for Ulster here. Lana is a heal bot. She joins early. She'll heal. She'll do her job. The two pairings that I've done before, first I did Jamka, then I did Midir. And I think in general, between her and her brother, one pairing is going to be very good for one child, but not so good for the other. I think in general, people try to focus on Lester because, poor magic or so-so magic on a healer, that's fine. They can still do their job. Poor strength on a combat unit can really ruin them. So, Lana, if you give her, say, like Claude or Azel, especially Claude, it moves her staff rank. You can have Rescue at this very start of Gen 1. She's like B, maybe even like A. But I think in general, people want to focus on Lester. Speaking of her brother, assuming you have just a decent pairing, like Jamka, even without the pursuit, at least gave adept and pass down the Brave Bow. I think the most common pairing is Midir, pursuit, pass down the Brave Bow. They also get a cost. He's mounted. He basically has the pros of Midir and Jamka for first generation combined. He has like good at combat like Jamka, but good at mobility like Midir. So I just think he's kind of like a better version of them. Then Diarmuid, that's like an engaged character, but like Diarmuid, something like that. I think it's A tier. First time played Genealogy, just last minute paired up Latches with Noish. She didn't get Pursuit. I just kind of gave up using him. I think in game, I just left him in Home Castle. Didn't even make use of his charm skill. But you give him Pursuit most commonly through Beowulf, like what I did in my second playthrough. Although I think like Alec or even like Finn would work as well. He's an early joining, cavalry movement, good movement, better combat than say like Alec and Noish. Has Pursuit, has good strength, can pass down swords that like Beowulf gets him. Just pretty solid all around. Oifey, top of A or bottom of S. He's with you for the almost entirety of the Generation 2. He joins like in turn like 2 or 3 the first chapter of Gen 2. He has basically all the qualities that you'd want in a unit. He has minor holy blood, so he has good growth. I think it's like 100% HP, 40% strength, 50% like skill or something, and like 30% defense and speed. Kind of lackluster, but well. Very solid base stats. High mobility because he's pre-promoted, uses swords, good weapon type, has pursuit. He does, I think, in general, quote-unquote, fall off towards the end in that he's not as good as maybe like some of these units in like A tier. They'll end up surpassing him. But he'll always be useful. You always find a use for him. Being pre-promoted doesn't hurt his experience gain, but he is at a much higher base level than Sigurd does, so he doesn't gain EXP quite as quickly as Sigurd did. But I still think he's very solid. Worth using from the moment he joins to like through in game. You'll always find use for someone that high movement, swords, pursuit, that sort of thing. Julia, I think, is comparable to Larcei and her sibling or her brother, just because similar in the sense that they're probably just barely B tier. They're probably going to end up like at the bottom of B tier when all said and done. She can heal. She has 1-2 range, pretty frail, but you can give her the Nosferatu tome, or at the very least, I don't think is as recommended, a stronger aura tome. So, she's contributing. I think the thing that saves her from being like C tier, so-so, but she still X amount, it's just because her contribution in the final chapter, like in game, you can beat the final boss without her, but she's clearly the intended way to do it. So just like I gave Lewin in the last generation just a slight leg up, pushing him to the bottom of B tier just because of Forseti. I think that contribution alone like just barely pushes her like from a C tier to B tier. Next up, we have Arthur. What you do with Arthur, I think, varies depending on who you have your father is. My first playthrough, I just held up Azael and Tail 2, and he gets Pursuit, and, the Wrath he already has, good magic. That's good. Second playthrough, I did with Lewin. He does not get Pursuit, and that does kind of help. He does kind of survive like Adept. The Forseti helps, although he is a good candidate then for the Pursuit ring. I'm going to put him like at the bottom of A or near the bottom of A. If you don't give him Lewin, or at least very least give him Azael, he's maybe like somewhere like B tier or so, because he does have to promote to get a mount. I think he has an easier time doing it than Azael, because at the very least, Wrath and other things you can give him. Generally, the parents end up surpassing, or the children end up surpassing their parents. I think he's better than Azael, but still, it's kind of like, he still has to put in that work for that mount. If you give him something like Lewin as father, then he like shoots up to like top of A. Maybe only held back from S just because you do have to put in that investment to get him to that promotion. So I'll kind of split the difference. Since that's somewhere B or top of A, I'll do like low A. And then naturally, of course, if you give him some like non-magic parent, like, I don't know, Arden or something, then he's one of these. But assuming you're putting some care, you give him like Azael or Lewin, he's maybe Claude. Maybe Claude be somewhere in B tier. I'm going to split the difference to like low A. Then we got Fee. I'm a little biased against Fee just because the first time I played Genealogy of Holy War, I paired Aranus up with Lewin. And then, of all characters, anything to go for second generation, I just thought, I'd go with Azael. I just kind of focused on Sed instead. So as a result of both my playthroughs, her strength kind of suffered. Even then, she's still usable. She's a good candidate to receive, Finn's Brave Lance if you want to get it, right away. Even then, she's still usable. And then there's also the possibility that Sed, he's probably going to be fine no matter what father you give him. So if you give him a more like physical-oriented father, like Noish or Lex, get Paragon advantage, or even just Alec, just to negate her weakness to bows and give her a bit more physical stats. Having a mount flying has some utility, even if it isn't as high as in other games. Plus, you can use staves when she promotes. I think no matter what you do, which parents you give her, I think she's going to be pretty solid. Then we got Johan and Johalivier, which is just one's mediocre on foot, the other one's mediocre on mount. And yeah, it does kind of make that big of a difference. I don't even know which one is which, just can't be bothered. But the mediocre one on foot is just, he's still usable. He can still contribute, like especially early on. If he gets to a fight, he'll do some level of damage. Even if he isn't one rounding, he'll weaken up an enemy for someone else to get the KO, or KO weaken enemy. But there's generally not real reason to use them. Your other foot mounted units are far better combat, and he doesn't have a mount. This one, he at least has mediocre combat. At least he has a mount. He has easier time getting to that action. He's the same thing as him. They both weaken enemies or kill some weakened enemies, but at least he has a much easier time getting to the action. It's kind of like Alec and Noish in first generation, where it's like mediocrity, but at least it's on a mount. We got Patty. I think this one's Patty. She's a thief. Like Gen 1, she'll get an extra bit of money here and there, and clearly this was like a rank run. She'd be like here, maybe even like here. But in general, the units if you're not trying to get everyone to their max level, the units that you're like putting more focus on, they'll clear the arena, get enough gold, they'll visit villages, they'll get enough to get by. She's just generally a little bit of extra gold here and there. The first pairing I did of all things, Claude and Bridget came in together. I just paired them off, and then she had a worthless Valkyrie staff in her inventory that she couldn't even use. But second time I wanted to do so she could have an easier time just buying things. If you're dead set on using her, so you can like borrow items and sell them back. If you want to raise everyone up. I've also heard some good pairings potentially for her are Holland, because then she'll get the Luna skill, and that helps because she has such low attack power, especially with Holland's boost to skill, and it raises her sword once you can pass down something like the Brave Sword, and then it also gives her brother Febail much higher skill, which he needs because Febail is less accurate. But in general, I just find the extra money there. It's nice, but not as good as some of these other units. Next up, we have Shannan. He's kind of in the. I think I'm gonna put him in S tier. He does not have a mount, and yeah, this does hurt him. But just having the holy weapon, getting that early on, the Balmog, such high boost like skill and speed, such an effective like boss killer. I think that does make such a difference. Like without the Balmog, you'd be somewhere among here, but just having that I think is enough to bolster them all the way to S. Even or if he has a better time, just general enemies can get to him quicker. But Shannon, for the trickier enemies, he does better. Just having that holy weapon, I think, puts him S. Even you're not going to be using the Belmont every single fight, but even without that, he's still good. He's solid. I think he's already promoted. You can switch to something like a Steel Blade or something for weaker enemies, so you're not always having to repair it. But he's a good candidate. I think him and like Eris, one get like the Thief Band you get, the other one maybe get a Thief Sword or maybe the Bargain Band or something, and that helps him use the Belmog more often. Very good unit carried by the Belmog that only he can use. I'm not going to count the glitch you can do if you make Holland their father and then kill Shannon off and like start to revive him. I'm not counting that glitch, but even if you did count that, it's just more of a hassle than what it's worth. He already comes with it. Next we have Finn. And Finn isn't a child unit, but what you did with him Gen 1 can, I think, affect his ranking. Like, on one end of the extreme, you might have, you've left him at base level, very close to base level, and then paired him off, married with someone, and then just starts, Chapter 7, all he has is an Iron Lance. On the other end, you might have got him all the way promotion and then kept the Hero Lance on him. So I'm just going to assume you put some level of investment in him. Maybe not promotion, but at least, close to promotion. And you didn't marry him, just because I think there are other better father options available, and it'll make Chapter 7 a little easier if you leave him unmarried. Assuming you did that, he's like B tier. Maybe, somewhere along the line of B tier. Maybe that varies, but probably near the top of B tier. He has a mount, he's good. Generally going to get surpassed by some of these units, but having a mount and being close to promotion, he'll find something to do. He does kind of fall off. He'll either like barely one-round enemies or barely fall short of one-rounding enemies, even if you give him like the Brave Lance. But he'll still find ways to contribute. Like I said, like with this guy, just weaken off units or kill off weak units. And he at least has pursuit. If lances are heavy, they're not as heavy as, and lances aren't as heavy as axes, and he doesn't naturally have pursuit. He doesn't even need the pursuit ring for it. Then we have Nana, just like Ethlyn in Gen 1, a mounted healer. You're always going to have something for her to do. Her mother's magic stat isn't that great, unless you give her some gimmicky parent like Gazelle or Claude. Her magic growth is going to be like 5% or 7%, but generally speaking, it's not really going to be a problem. You still heal just fine. Maybe you have to heal twice, but hey, that just means more EXP for her, or maybe another healer. And especially if you give her like a parent like Beowulf, she can at least have, job pursuit, and she can have combat, plus having charm, just like her brother. That helps things out quite a bit. Just like Ethlyn, there's always going to be some way you can use a mounted healer. Next we have Leif. And Leif's kind of tricky to rate. I see maybe play as low as like C tier, or B tier, like, sometimes B tier. Originally I was thinking maybe like A tier, but I think he's S tier, and that might be hard to explain. Maybe I am like slightly overrating him. Yes, he does start out. He doesn't have pursuit naturally. You look at him, he's got good growth because he's got holy blood on two different sides, mother's and his father's. He's got critical and depth, nice skills, but you can't always rely on him. And if you can get him promotion, he grows into Master Knight, just like Lachesis. Gets pursuit, gets an A rank in every weapon except Sea and Light, and can't use dark magic. He's going to be the only mounted user you have that can use rescue. The rescue staff, like not rescue, that's not in this game. If you can get him to promotion and just having A rank staves as well as A rank in the weapons, I feel like once you get Leif to promote, he's such a good unit that he's worth the investment. Like you're putting some thought into your pairings, then most of them, the ones you care about at least, are going to get pursuit. Maybe something like a dancer or thief might not have it, but you might not care about that. He, I think, is the best candidate for the pursuit ring to pass down. The only downside is you won't get it for chapters like 4 or 5 in first generation, but even then there's only maybe like 2 other characters like Noish and Lewin who would really care about it then. But you pass down the pursuit ring and then sell it off once he promotes. I think that'll help really get him to promotion faster. And yeah, Oifey definitely comes right off the box grader, but I just think just how great Leif is when you get promotion. He's worth the investment. Kind of like Seliph. Not as much. I'd say maybe even Leif is better once he promotes, but it's easier to get Seliph promoted, and I think it makes the game easier. But I think he's comparable in that regard. Next up is Eris, who just right out the box has everything you'd want in a unit. He has a mount, he has pursuit, he uses swords, he has the holy weapon, the Mistletoe. Great unit. Him, Shannan, Oifey. Leif kind of to extent if you can promote Seliph. These are all just the fail-safe characters. Like maybe you screwed up your parents really badly, they're not optimal. Maybe you got characters killed off using substitutes. These just provide you with a way to be sure you always have a way to clear the game. Only thing about Eris, or 2 things, I guess. His speed is decent for just like common enemies. He's not the best at defeating bosses, and speed might get a little low. He won't double, or if the enemy has pursuit, he'll get doubled for the stronger like boss enemies. And he lacks a good 1-2 range, but I mean so does Shannan. Kind of Seliph to an extent. Also maybe like the magic sword or something, but even then, just the Mistletoe, pursuit, sword, great stats. Couldn't give him anything less than S tier. Speaking of S tier, Lena, S tier, dancer. You get 1 chapter earlier than the first generation. Dances for people. She might already, depending on how you did your pairings and setup, she might already have the leg ring and night ring, or maybe do something like do, which has to use time purchasing off. The first time I played, I just paired her, Sylvia up with Alec, but the stats you really get on a dancer and skills generally don't matter. Maybe if you're going for rank, you need to have her like max level or something, but generally it's fine. The second time I did Claude, which helps Sylvia's son more than anything, but generally the parents doesn't really matter, and you'll have an early dancer dance before people in the second generation. Tine, yeah, just like her mother, just not that good. 5 movement, not good. Just have Wrath shenanigans, joins a little bit early. I just find, also, even if you get a promotion, I think she uses like swords and staves, which are helpful, but it's not like it's a mount or something like that. And also, I mentioned kind of Arthur and that pairing. It's just that Arthur works fine with Lewin or Azel as his father. If you do Azel, Tine, she's fine. She'll have Pursuit and Wrath. If you focus on Lewin, I think Tine seems to suffer because she's not going to have the Force Steady. She does get a depth, she got survive, and she doesn't even have Pursuit. But either way, she's not going to be that great. She doesn't just really lack of movement and the lack of promoted material. She doesn't get a big payoff when / if she promotes. Really hurts her. We got Febail, something like that. Footlocked Archer. At the very least, you can do the talk conversation with the Dean and Bridget in Gen 1 to at least get Ufel Strongbow. Is a little inaccurate. You can sometimes switch to a killer bow, but good at defeating enemies on player phase. If you can get to them, one enemy at a time, that's That's something. It's fine. I think you fell might be like the worst playable, at least, holy weapon, just because, well, partially because no one get a mount gets it, but that doesn't stop Shannan. But also, it's so shaky that it's such shaky hit rates, and it doesn't really have an enemy phase. I think it might be like the worst Gen 1 holy weapon. We got said. Um, his pairing, I think, can influence him to an extent. Like if you just focus on Fee and give him like a physical oriented father, he might suffer a bit, be somewhere in like B tier, something like that. But obviously, if you give him Lewin, then he like shoots up even without a mount. Just having that to the top of A tier, like borderline S tier, only held back by his slight lack of availability and a mount. Just like Roth, I'm going to split the difference. I'm kind of assuming one of these two at least has Lewin as their father. Because there's one other unit that can learn Force SETI or Hand Force SETI, but these two are clearly the best units for it. There's pros and cons of each. Sage has better base caps than a Mage Knight, but Mage Knight has better movement. Arthur has to put investment in. You have to get him promote to a mount, but he does have better availability. Sed's stats might suffer to an extent if you force on physical father, but at least he'll have staves, which you can always do something with that. So whichever one has Lewin as their father is going to be the better of these two, really. But I'm just going to slightly give it to Sed. I think he's generally safer no matter what pairing you do. He's going to at least be fine. He's going to be varying degrees of good, regardless of which pairing you get. Next, we have Coirpre. Coirpre is just a level 1 staff bot. Joins somewhat late into the game. He's held back from D tier because, if you give Claude as his father, like I did in my second playthrough, he'll at least have the Valkyrie staff and resurrect. That has some uses, especially like in game. If you have enough gold on him, you can, send him off to fight, the Pegasus Knight trio and Ishtar, and then if one of them dies, revive, and then someone else dies, repair with $30,000 and revive again. Maybe like warp them back up to the home castle or the castle you're fighting or something. It's fine. You don't have to go dying. But other uses, if you pass him Lewin, or if Lewin is his father, you can pass him for SETI, but he can't use it until he promotes. So these two are much better options for that. Yeah, just in general, not that good. He'll at least be healing. Use the Valkyrie staff. That's about it. Even if you don't get the Valkyrie staff, he has like a few options. Like I said, Lewin. If you're, I don't know why you do it unless you're just kind of looking for a new, challenging, spicy way to play through. If you give him Lex, you could have Paragon promote faster. If you even, do as a father, so Lene can buy it. If you want to give like Self Leg when you start out with, you could make do Lene's father, and she'd have Bargain, so you can get it back easier, and then he'll have Bargain for various shenanigans. And in general, just level 1 heal bot. Hannibal doesn't really have any big use. He's like Art in the first generation, but without the availability. He does come already promoted, but like I alluded to in like last video, Pavice just isn't as reliable or useful on a player unit than an enemy unit. Doesn't have pursuit. Even if you do get him the pursuit ring, his speed's like 11 or so. Just kind of has to rely on adept. Does have vantage. 5 movement. Good strength, good defense, but there's rarely any reason, I think, for a Hannibal to shine. And the last character you get in Gen 1, assuming you paired off all your units or the last unit you get in Gen 2, assuming you paired off all your units in Gen 1, is Altena, which you would think, like, oh, she's a mounted game dominated by movement. She gets pursuit when she promotes, but she's very close to promoting when she joins. She has a holy weapon, the Gable, that gives her, like, I think, plus strength and defense and speed, I want to say. The only thing held back for us, again, Flyers don't get advantage from road tiles. There's not any opportunity to use them. And she joins, somewhat late, but so that's going to be, like, great, but I think she's held back some stuff. Like, clearly, all the good things I mentioned, there's kind of a floor for how bad she can possibly be. Like, high B tier is probably good, but I just think, well, the things I already mentioned, lack of road tiles, Flyers don't get the road tile bonus, as, your cavalry or even foot units do. There's that. The fact she joined somewhat late, but I just think Altena is an example of why you can't just look at a unit in a vacuum. You have to look in the context of like the maps they join, the maps they're able in. Because she joined your party like midway through chapter 9, and she can fight some of the flyers there. You can take her just do one of the castle you have, take her through the arena, and then she'll be promoted. She's not a good candidate to fight off against Arion or brothers. Gable versus him for it isn't a good match. And then you look in the next chapter, it's just all dark mages or so many like mages and sleep spams, and all that. And she just doesn't have good resistance. And even in the next chapter, again, you do have to deal with many mages. And so there's that. Your low resistance does come up just because when she joins, there's so many mages. There's also just the fact in general, I think if you use the Gable on her, she'll hit hard once and even just barely survive, and you don't have an enemy phase. If they're using physical weapons besides bows, sometimes the Gable, they just refuse to attack her. And if they're mages, she's going to die. If you try switching to like a lighter weapon, like a Silver Lance or something, you'll double with it, like a sword, but then it won't be as strong as the Gable. Still certainly usable. All those negative things I said, there's a floor to how bad like the Wyvern with all these good things could be, but I think she's one of the worst Wyvern riders in the series, which near the top of B tier just speaks how good Wyvern riders are. Then we just have the substitute units, which I did do run using them. They're fine. They're usable. It's just they have, like some might say, bad unit feel because they don't do anything that spectacular. Maybe a few of them are good, or you could make the case they're better than the original, or at least close. But I have done a playthrough with them, so I'll try talking about them. Larcei and a brother substitute, I think it's like Radney and Devon or something. Probably top of C tier. Actually pretty similar to their parents. Footlock, sword units, generally good in combat. Just Larcei just has in her Ulster just have a few more bells and whistles up their sleeve. That's like it's the difference between bottom of B, top of C. I have heard in some situations these are actually better in that they'll weaken enemies better in the prologue, which good parents for these two they won't. They'll just one round them. If you want to give all the XP to Seliph, they're better in that aspect. Not enough to make them pass their originals or anything, but still think it's worth noting. Lana substitute, Healbot, not the same. Like I mentioned earlier, if you gave Zell as her father, especially that Claude, Lana has the ability to shoot up, and this one doesn't. But if you're focusing on the Lester pairing, or what's good for Lester, then they're about the same. Clearly, she's worse. She don't get the inheritance or skills or anything, but they'll do their job. Demi, mediocrity on a horse, like many characters in Gen 1. He does at least have pursuit, so I'll give him that. Tristan does not have pursuit, but swords are much lighter than axes. He has critical. I can also make the case maybe even like this. Just kind of mediocrity on a horse. A mid, I don't know, what are you going to do with mid? Just low movement. He does have 1-2 range, but he does rely on adept, and the speed isn't that great. He'll contribute. He'll fight. I think when I did my substitute only run, once Leif was done with the pursuit ring, I actually gave it to a mid of all characters, and even then it's just kind of Mina, something like that. She flies. She has a mount. She does not get pursuit. She has to rely on adept. I think that's a personal skill. I think, or maybe she has to promote. I'm not sure. I think she just has adept by default. Mediocrity on a mount. This one's Daisy. Thief gets you extra money here and there. Thief gets you extra money here and there. Better skill sets up for Patty, obviously. Like you do Lex as a parent, I've heard is good. You can give her sleep edge. Just keep resetting the arena. She has Vantage. Just puts enemy sleep win that way. Holland, capacity on Hero Sword and like Luna, but in general, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. Patty's better, but they'll do the same job. Janae, mounted healer, does not have charm, doesn't have the good skills, but just as there's always something for a mounted healer to do, I think that plays to Janae as well. She's still fine. She's still usable. Better than, mini units. But, yep, it's still good. There'll always be a time where you want to be able to do something. There's always be a time where there's something for her to do, just having that high movement and the ability to heal. Just not as good as Nana, obviously. Layla, quad dancer or quad dancer. Some people say Layla's better because she has charm. I do think in a vacuum, the skills I think Lene will get, or any type of skill, she has, like, I think Miracle and Adept by default, and clearly I'd rather have charm. But it's just the fact that with Lene, she'll have a better time with inheritance. If you can have her inherit the leg ring and night ring right away, supposedly has to work up the gold for it. Or even if you do something like give off the leg ring at first to Seliph, you could, have do as her father, so you can have easier time, buying it back, that sort of thing. I think just for that inheritance reason, I think the original is better. But they're both, quad dancers, so both great, fantastic. Linda, I think, is a rare substitute. So I think is better than the original just because she has Paragon and she can, get to promotion sooner. Though Tine can potentially have a pursuit, like a Zell or something that's there. But even then, a footlocked, mage doesn't promote to anything fantastic. There's kind of a cap of how high that can go. Asalio, kind of like Febail, I think what separates them, what makes him like low C versus like top T, at the least Febail has like a holy weapon. Might not be the best holy weapon, but still you fell. Asalio doesn't get any of that. He does have pursuit. He'll fight some enemies fairly enough, like on player phase, but not amount. Has trouble getting to the action. Doesn't have much in the way of enemy phasing. Hawk. Honestly, kind of pretty good. In some ways, like I've heard someone say that Hawk is basically the worst possible set, but there's still four. Looking at like Noish, as the father said, I think Hawk actually has slightly better magic and speed, both base stats and growths. So there is that. He'll have decent magic, decent combat. He won't have a mount, but he'll also have staves. So there's always going to be something for him to do with that. Actually, pretty solid. If you're using not solid enough, I think I would recommend leaving Aranis unpaired because Fee difference in pursuit I think is a big difference for Fee. But if you don't get the pair, I think Hawk will still find plenty of ways to contribute. And last, near or somewhat at least, Charlo. Level 1 heal bot, level 1 heal bot. You could make the case Charlo's better just because he does have Paragon. He does have an event with Hannibal and get the Berserk Staff. I think Coirpre has a few better father options, namely Claude to get the Valkyrie Staff. If you want to be really funny, you could do Lewin and you could get 4 setting promotes. If you have Lex, he'll have Paragon as well. Whatever other, there's also just general item inheritance you can handle better. But I could see Charlotte being better. And that is my Gen 1 tier list. Thank you so much for watching. Or Gen 2 tier list, sorry. Thank you so much for watching. Any questions, comments, concerns, characters you think I overrated or underrated, please let me know. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day. And this is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.